Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Sean from Saturdays with Sean. Hello. The best part of waking up is vanilla Coke in my mug. Is this thing starting? It looks like it's starting. Right. Make sure I get some audio. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me this fine April 2nd, 2022 morning. Victor Wyatt, good to see you. Good to see you. Make sure I get some audio. Look at that. Look at it. It's working. Everything's going smoothly. I get used to screwing stuff up so much that I have to check. It ruins my confidence. Roger, morning. Nubis, good afternoon. Matthew, good to see you. All right. Got a lot of stuff I picked up during the week this week. I will start off. Picked up as in news, not picked up as in games. But one of the things I did pick up and ordered a copy of, probably helps that if I'm not on that screen, is The Game Wizards by John Peterson. I thought, what the heck, if you're not familiar with John, he wrote Playing at the Edge of the World. Is that the game? Or not the game, the book, I believe is the proper title. If you've ever seen that thing, it is a freaking monster. Think of the thickest programming book that you could find, and that's pretty much that book that John wrote. I had it. It was so dense. It's Playing at the Edge. Playing at the Edge. John Peterson. I think it's that. Maybe not. What is the title? Book, not video. Playing at the World. Playing at the World, a history of simulating wars, people, and fantastic adventures from chess to role-playing games. That thing is a monster. I don't know if it has the page count in here or not. 720 pages. Yeah, it's like a college course book. Absolutely, Victor knows. Now, for gamers, they get it, they put it on their shelf. Some of them will read it. I had it. I gave it up just because I needed to make room for role-playing games. Anyways, I know I have not met John. I probably passed him in the halls at Gary Con. And I figured I'd pick this up to see a little bit about how it was. It's, obviously about the history of the epic battle for Dungeons and Dragons. Hey, Eric, good to see you. The epic battle of Dungeons and Dragons. Just telling everybody I picked up Game Wizards by John Peterson. I'm on page 16. And I don't know why I bought it. I think it's sometimes interesting to read about the history of that company. I'm also wondering how it stacks against Mr. Ewalt of Dice and Men, which I thought was a pretty decent read, and I should say listen because I actually have that one on audio. David, I believe is his first name, David Ewalt, and very interesting book. You could find it. Here's it on the mighty Amazon. And I thought this was a good one. I don't know. This one, just David's is 304 pages. I think John even has an index, by the way. Quite a bibliography. A lot of bibliography and resources. John's is about 317. So it clocks in about the same same amount of content. Assuming of Dice and Men has the same font size, if it's a bigger print read. But I like so far, and I was afraid that John would get too academic in this book, and he didn't. He's very his tone and voice is very much light and something that you would find in a good documentary. And I mean a good documentary, not a boring one. Like, it's very narrative and put some flavor in there. So that's something I could appreciate from this book. So we'll see. The tale, the one thing that I'm always nervous about with these histories and documentaries, specifically when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games, is, they have an adage of, the history is written by the winners, or, whatever that saying is. And I don't subscribe to the altar of Gygax. I appreciate what Gary had done and what the company has provided, but I also I try to keep, how do I put it? People are people. I'm not being starstruck, I think, is not probably within me, which I probably lie a little bit. If I met, Dave Grohl I like Dave Grohl and his style and what he's about. And if I met Dave, I would probably, be impressed with, I would hope, meeting him. But the reason I bring this up is I've met people who you feel like you're really wanting to meet, and then they let you down for some reason, right? So, with the book, what I want to, with these documentaries in this book, is that I would hope that it's an objective kind of view or perspective, right? Kind of just, I don't want it to be like a statistics book, right? Kind of boring and, drab and, without maybe it's, the minute I say flavor, if you will, then you get into maybe bias a little bit. Anyways, Empire of Imagination is another book that's kind of out there that does this stuff. And this was written by Michael Whitwer. And Michael is an interesting guy. I've heard him on the D20 radio network, the D20 network. They do the Star Wars role-playing game podcast. I think it's Michael who's on there. So does he play Darth Maul in the video games or the animated series? Michael's like an actor, celebrity type. He was also involved with the Arts and Arcana book, I think. I think it's him and his brother, along with another person. But Michael wrote this book and has kind of an endorsement from Luke, which is great, right? Luke's signing off. But then when I see that, I'm kind of nervous because Luke's not going to sign off that paints Gary into a bad light. And I don't think Gary was a bad guy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to pass any judgment. But let's face it, Gary did some things that weren't probably the most business savvy. TSR is not around anymore, period. End of discussion. And Gary was booted out. So, some people are really mad at that and still remain upset about that to this day. And it might have been how it went down, pretty underhanded and not very cool. But we were all not. I wasn't there. And of course, some of these stories are portrayed by folks that were there, and many were probably. Here's one thing I'll say. You read this book, all right? You read Empire of Imagination, and you read Of Dice and Men, and I bet you that you will not find any quotes or references, as far as I know. And I'll have to look in John Peterson, because John does quite a bit of research, and his bibliography is extensive in this book. It's quite a few pages. What's he list here? Yeah, I mean, he's got it down into parts. 317 references in his bibliography. The reason I bring this up is there anything from Lorraine, can't remember her last name, that's in that, probably not. She wasn't looked upon very well in this whole ordeal. So if you're not familiar with TSR and its history, they're really good books because I think it's good information on the craziness, the up and down roller coaster ride that was TSR. Talking about just exponential growth in the 80s, like 300% year over year, or it might even have been higher than that. It could have been like 3,000%. It was just crazy silly. From, two guys meeting at a war game table to publishing, some pamphlets and then having it become, the biggest, greatest role-playing game in history, to this day. So anyways, I want the purpose is I want to read the book. It'll be fun. It'll be a good read. It's probably going to hit some of the points that David Ewalt came across, like how much money they made in so many years and the dealings of the two brothers, the Bloom brothers, that were on the board, and the stock buyout and the removal of Gary. That wasn't the end of when Gary left, that wasn't the end of TSR. Like, it continued on until they were completely in financial straits. But at one time, I mean, it's just an interesting story. Anyways, I think to some degree, but again, you always get a bend. Anyways, Joe says, I'm sorry I let you down, Sean. What'd you let me down for? You let me down? You didn't let me down, did you? Phil said, it was good. It was and still is an ugly fight. Yeah. Says Eric. It's weird. It's a weird dynamic. And I'm not in some of those circles, right? Like, I don't go to the TSR reunion, but there are people at that TSR reunion at GaryCon every year. Most of them are local. Margaret Weiss is there and a few others. But it is interesting dynamic because there is an entire group of TSR alum that aren't lumped into that kind of group, right? There's a whole different group that came into TSR after Gary left. And one of them was like Jeff Grubb, I think, was in that group. Ed Greenwood was in that group, I think. And then, who wrote second edition? See his face. Oh, for Pete's sakes. My brain, I'm telling you my names. He had a, not Skip, what was it? Second edition D&D. I can't remember. Come on, you guys. I know you know this stuff. Let's see. I don't think it's going to say who wrote it. David Cook. That's who it was. David Zeb Cook. And he's been at GaryCon. And I think he might have been a guest or he might have just went. And I don't know how well all those guys know or knew Gary. I know they obviously knew of him, but I don't know if they weren't like Frank Mentzner, right? And Cass and a few others that were pretty close with Gary. Get out of here, Augie. Stop climbing me. And get out of there. Go on. Oh, I got to give him treats. So yeah. And I don't, so the clique is kind of an interesting dynamic when, the folks that were loyal to Gary, and those that came after him. So Phil says, I think that book gets a little into Gary's coke habit and extramarital affairs when in Hollywood. Oh, this one, The Game Wizards, Phil? It does portray Gary as the victim, how he was pushed out of TSR. Hey, Lucas. You met me and I didn't live up to your expectations. Dude, I'm lost, Joe. You got me lost, buddy. Don't make my brain think too much, buddy. Yeah, it's Zeb. Interesting. Herman, Sean, what are you using for a standing desk? Hit me up, DM, dude, on Discord. I'll let you know. I splurged a little bit on the standing desk because I didn't want it to wobble. This is like pretty steady, like. Anyways, so I'm reading this book. I'm gonna give it a read, and hopefully I won't fall asleep every time I try to read it. And so far, it's pretty decent. You know, it's talking about currently the roots of where they're meeting in Horticulture Hall and kind of the starting of Gary and the wargaming scene and a couple of the zines that he had been involved with. And they literally, it's starting at Gen Con, whatever, where they meet, Arneson and Gygax. So we'll see. I am like, yeah, I'm interested to hear about some of the not so cool stuff of the story. And whether, and there is like I know the book, David Ewalt, and maybe this one, I know, I think John is objective enough, but at the same time, I know he knows some of these guys. But yeah, the way that Gary was ousted was crappy. I mean, Steve Jobs, that occurred to Steve Jobs, right? The unfortunate history of TSR was that Gary didn't get ousted and then come back. And save the company. And I think the interesting part of the TSR saga is just how sad it was. To me, I just was, you ride that wave to the top where you're moving out to Hollywood and schmoozing with celebrities. You get a cartoon made, you're on 60 Minutes, probably not for a great reason. But it was, and there wasn't as many people playing it as they are now today. But the controversy probably didn't hurt back in the 80s, right? The Satanic Panic. But it's just, there is no TSR anymore. Well, we've covered that base. But I mean, it just goes to show you that these companies aren't invulnerable. And if they're not managed correctly, they're gone. They're just gone. Poof. Right. And that's the big tragedy about the whole thing. And I think that's some of the fascination of these authors of how could you be, first of all, it's a hobby that we all have a love and passion for. And it all kind of started, right, in this space, specifically with Gary and Arneson, and that wasn't without trouble either. Between those two, you start getting money flying around. And, Gary was kind of the Steve Jobs to Arneson's Wozniak a little bit, even though I would say Wozniak had contributed more than probably Mr. Arneson did, but nonetheless, as a part of the legal piece, he's mentioned in a lot of the founding pieces of Dungeons and Dragons. So he's kind of some people might think he's like the forgotten hero in the big story because Gary gets a lot of that limelight. But somebody would say it would never be a D&D without Gary, simply because he was the guy who pushed it right into a business and a company, and he was kind of the extrovert of the two. So I don't know. Yeah, that's another kind of tragedy in the whole thing. Is how that kind of fumbles apart. But that's business. Like there's a lot of business stuff like that just bands are like that too, right? Popular bands, the Foo Fighters, I mentioned, I had a drummer before and a couple guitarists before, and Dave's like, they're not cutting and I got to kick them out. And the way it goes down is not always cool for whatever reason. So same with like game companies and businesses and who gets the rights to what and gets wacky. Anyways. Joe says, you made a comment about meeting celebs and them not living up to your standards. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Now, thank you. Now you've alleviated my speculation on what you're talking about. So we'll see. All right, let's get to some stuff that I picked up over the weekend, if I can. I'm going to we'll just go down the list and hope that I looked at the dates that these all came out, because it could be old for all I know. I don't know. First one, Gaming Shelf Column, Sandy Pug Games, Kickstarter, tabletop role-playing game news. So this is from Sandy Pug Games. No, this is from Gizmodo. Sorry. But just some things that are coming out, I think, is for the most part, that's why I kind of snagged this one to take a look at. So Sandy Pug Games, Monster Care Squad, talks a little bit about that. But has anybody talked about or come across some of these featured releases that are coming out here? Tattoo, Torque, Back Again from the Broken Land. Some of the indie scene would say. Tattoo by Sean Patrick Kane. Also did Long Haul 1983 and Fake Chess, a party game reminiscent of Ink Master that uses some parts of the classic board game Taboo to play. You play as artists and clients as the former tries desperately to design a tattoo that encapsulates all the client's ideas. Huh. What do you think about that? Torque. From Good Luck Press comes Torque, Torq, a 2-for-1 game that takes inspiration from post-apocalypse road warrior media that alternates between a fast-paced racing tactical and character-driven role-playing. As you go from community to community, you work to build the world back from the brink. Torque. The other one, Back Again from the Broken Land by Cloven Pine Games, 60-page physical zine edition. Follows small adventurers who are returning from a big war. Directly inspired by the long walks and meditative stretches of travel in Lord of the Rings, this is a game that de-emphasizes combat and focuses on the moments of weariness, hope, and reflection that can happen when the battlefield is at your back. PBTA-based mechanics in that one. Yeah, interesting. That art. You guys looking at any of these? Keeping them in mind? Crowdfunding Yaziba's Bed and Breakfast. A slice of life legacy tabletop role-playing game about a found family in their magical home. Similar to Choose Your Own game, this book is played over the course of 48 chapters, each of which is a 1 to 2 hour scenario with its own unique but quick-to-learn rules. Players take control of one of the 7 long-term residents of a B&B or choose from a cast of 50 quirky guests, each of whom has their own ongoing storylines. Justicar, a role-playing game about romanticized courtroom drama, intrigue, and comedy inspired by the likes of Phoenix Wright and My Cousin Vinny. Players each embody a unique key role as they collaboratively tell the story of a crime and its mysteries. Yeah, some of these are probably out by now. Hey, Jason. Morning. Next one, The Twilight Throne and the House of Ruin. Political intrigue TTRPG of surreal magic and tragic intimacy for 3 to 7 players. Twilight Throne uses the Forge in the Dark system of Blades in the Dark fame and restructures the system dramatically. You players are powerful nobles, beings of pure magic in a broken land of fairy tales, serving a throne that will be the last in an age of curses and corruption. Death in Space is a good one, Eric. In other news, Bones Deep by David Sherduan. Tabletop RPG of skeletons exploring the ocean floor for Troika. It launches in a couple days from this recording, April 4th. Graham Barber, also known as Panzerline, has written an introspective essay on D&D's issues with lore. Might have to check that one out. To Catch a Hellforged Swine is a system-agnostic adventure for Roll for Tarask that is deliciously dangerous and tightly written. The Dragon Prince has released Cortex system role-playing game penned by Cam Banks titled Tales of Xadia. That's out. Everybody's starting to grab that copy from the Kickstarter. A lot of the people, I shouldn't say the reviews, but a lot of people are appreciating that role-playing game. I'm not familiar with the IP, therefore I can't really speak well to that. But a lot of people are liking it. They're, some might not. I don't know. Coyote and Crows being delivered, beast of a book. A lot of people are praising its accolades. It's I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago that it was being put in the science fiction something. They got a writing award or some entry that isn't typically open to role-playing games. So World Champ Game Company published Chainface, character on a quest to understand power for use in any game. And then the last one, The Snow Queen by Jian Shim, is fully funded and taking pre-orders. The Snow Queen, which I'm not familiar with. So this is Gizmodo. If you like those guys, go over and check their stuff out for grabbing all this info. And I'll have links down below to some of the stuff. So just some things that are being released that some of you might or may not know. D&D Shape the Future of Krynn, New Unearthed Arcana Survey. So the Belloflostsouls by J.R. Zambrano article. But most Unearthed Arcana surveys at Wizards, obviously. That's where you want to go. But it's just an article saying, hey, go over there and check it out. WotC wants your help to shape the future of Krynn with a new survey for their latest Unearthed Arcana. So I think it's pretty safe to say they're trying to do something with Krynn. It'd be interesting. They actually did an article called Heroes of Krynn on Unearthed Arcana with Kenders, lunar magic sorcerers, 2 powerful new backgrounds, 3 different feat trees. So they're also, I thought I saw an article, and I might come across this a little bit if I bookmarked it to talk about it, about some of the things that they're, like Jeremy Crawford was interviewed. And I think there were things they were talking about, like the feat tree piece in Unearthed Arcana and how that might, are they using that for 6th or 5.5 and what some of those rule changes are. So back in 3.5, I don't know about 4th edition as much, but 3.5 for sure, like the Book of Swords started incorporating some of the 4th that would eventually be available in 4th edition. So they're starting, I think, kind of tap around some different rules and mechanics for 5th edition, giving them a kind of a run in some of these supplements or Unearthed Arcana to see if it stands engagement with the customer. So Krynn is interesting because Dragonlance, it just made me think last night about this article specifically. I was kind of going through some of the books of Dragonlance, and you can do that. Just Google Dragonlance books. There's a Wikipedia article that I think lays out all the novels, comic books, anthologies, and when they were published and the ISBN numbers and who wrote them or edited them. And I want to say like the last book of that series was in that kind of realm was 2009. That's like 13 years ago. Like, hey, that's my math, right? And 5th edition has probably propelled D&D to a level it's never been in its history. I mean, we've heard that over and over. Millions of gamers. It's never been as popular as it ever, it's more popular than it ever has been. And that's been around since, well, it hasn't been 13 years, is it? How long has D&D 5th edition been around? 7 years, maybe? Is it in the Wikipedia? Wow, holy cow, okay. Boy, the first page of Google on Dungeons and Dragons doesn't give you a whole ton. It's like videos and local game stores. That's it. IMDb, no. I would think that release date, maybe? March 3rd, 2000. That's not right. That's 2023. That's the movie, probably. Yeah, that's the movie. Dungeons and Dragons, Wikipedia. Fifth edition, 2014. 8 years. So there's a 5-year gap from a book, a Dragonlance book that was written. And so what am I getting at? Right? Let's get to the point, Sean. Damn. Is a lot of us probably know Dragonlance, but a lot of us are probably the smaller demographic for D&D 5th edition. They did Eberron, so you could say, well, Sean, they did Eberron. That was an older setting, and there might have been a lot of people that liked Eberron when it first released, but it wasn't inherent to 5th edition. But they did release books for Eberron in 4th, and they released the book for Eberron in 5th. So how is Dragonlance going to be received by the masses of the 5th edition crowd? It would be the interesting question, and that could go for any of them, right? It could be Dark Sun, Planescape, right? And some of them haven't, 4th edition, they did Dark Sun, I think, right? They haven't done Planescape since, is it 3rd? 2nd? As much as I appreciated Dragonlance growing up, we still never played in that world. I think we played the first 1 or 2 modules with the pre-gens, right? A buddy of mine was like Tanis, the main character in the Chronicles, which are the first 3 core books. If you haven't read the books, go ahead and do that. They're really good to reading to your children, is what I'm told. And frankly, I would agree. I think for some of us, it probably didn't age as well as we hoped and anticipated. And for some of us, we didn't care. They were great. But I find a lot of parents that reminisce and look back on the Dragonlance books and they read them to their kids. It's, an easier read than maybe some of the long diatribes that Tolkien can get into. So I think I read Dragonlance before I read Tolkien. As a matter of fact, I know I did. So it has a nice kind of soft spot in my heart, but it'll be interesting where, many people, and that, again, keep in mind the book I'm talking about, if it was the last one that kind of was published in 2009, it's not even one of the core Dragonlance books, I'm sure, right? It was probably, for me, the 6 core books of Dragonlance are the Chronicles and the Twins. And then after that, it got to be a lot of third-party authors doing anthologies or solo books about another character within the universe of Krynn and Dragonlance. And they're good books. I mean, I think I read The Legend of Huma and a few others, but definitely picking and choosing what I read after that. And one could argue even the Twins books might be a little, maybe not to their liking. And then, of course, the one Dragons of Summer Flame, right? That was like a book that was done as part of the Chronicles, but later or in a different world. And I think so, right? Because of I'm speculating only because I read part of it. I didn't read the whole thing, and it was part of the seasons, right? Dragons of Autumn Flame, Spring Dawning, Winter, whatever the winter one was, Winter Solstice. No, it wasn't Solstice, but anyways. So we'll see what comes out of that. Are you interested in picking it up when it comes out? So one, were you a fan of Dragonlance? Because if you weren't, then this is all kind of a moot point. But if you were, do you plan on buying the Kryn or Dragonlance book when it's released? And of course, it's probably going to coincide with Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss's release of a new trilogy, which is the first book I think is due out later this year. And I think most of that, well, that one's probably wrapped up, but I think they're continuing to do book 2 and 3 of the new series. So it'll be interesting to see that. And frankly, with those books, that may be the younger generations kick into Dragonlance. And then maybe then they'll go back and read like, oh, you read these first 3. It's kind of like the Star Wars trilogy, right? A lot of the younger generation started with the prequels. You know, they weren't around in 1977. Heck, half of us were really, really young back in 1977 to see Star Wars. And then we got hyped about the prequels, and then we had thoughts. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how Dragonlance shapes up from that perspective. So where do I weigh in? I don't know. I'd have to look at the book. And I think if I bought it, it would just be, read the book. Oh, that's cool. That's kind of interesting. How'd they stat out Draconians? Did they change them to Dragonborn? Or how does that relate? I always like the Knights of Solamnia. I think it's a good order for any fantasy game. The Order of the Rose, the Order of the Crown. And I can't even believe I remember half this stuff, honestly. And Kryn, I thought that the novels were, how some of those factions came together were kind of interesting, and the different elves and things of that nature. But I don't think I would ever run a game there. If I didn't do it when I was like all in on Dragonlance and reading the core novels and even some more further than that, why would I do it now? But that's just me. So Summer Flame was amazing, says Joe Swick from Boston Globe. Yeah, Planescape 2nd edition. Still crazy fans out there. Phil says, I don't think Dragonlance does well. Not sure that setting is what the majority of the new gen of gamer is looking for. WotC's really starting to saturate the market with settings. Ty says, I could see Dragonlance being well received by the D&D community if they played up the actual writing of the dragons more to kind of pull in that group from how to train your dragon. Interesting. I mean, let's face it, if you're going to run Dragonlance, you got to have dragons. But that's a whole nother dynamic, right? I think that's, some of us were like Dungeons and Dragons, and how often did we run into dragons? And here's the world, like, it's part of the deal. Yeah. What's up, Matthew? Matthew Helsby, good to see you. Eric says he's excited about it. Eric, would you run anything in it? Let me know. Phil, Summer's Flame wasn't great. I was a huge fan of Dragonlance as a kid, not going to buy the 5th edition. I have the 1st and 2nd edition box set. I think a lot of the current classes fit what that setting was. I actually gave up my Dragonlance stuff to Brett. The Age of Mortals, I think, book, and I think there was another one I had. Pretty sure I did. I don't think I kept one. The only reason I would have kept one is if it was like worth $300 or something like that on eBay. So yeah, why would I buy this now since I got rid of the old stuff? It could be easily incorporated, right? that's another topic too, is could you take an old 3.5 or 3.0 edition book, even second edition, first, of Dragonlance, and just use all the flavor stuff, right? Like, who cares what the stats are Dragonlance wise? Because they're not going to be any different from core, really. The Draconians spec'd out might be interesting, but did they put the Draconians in a monster manual? I don't even know. Probably not. I don't understand why they ever did Dragonborn. Why didn't they just do Draconians? Is it Draconians because they're evil? Right? Is there the evil NPC type, right? Bad magic, creating those? I don't know. All right. Dorigo, good to see you. Reading them to my daughter. Some of it I have to skim over. She'd be happier to have a whole book on Boo-Poo the Gully Dwarf. Oh, for sure, right? Boo-Poo. Some pretty iconic characters. The Wizard's Test, loved running them. Nubis, the only new 5e setting books I'd take a look at are Dark Sun and Spelljammer. Spelljammer's coming, mark my words. It's coming. It's coming. It's in the works. Everything else is either too similar to Forgotten Realms or done better by the OSR. Eric says, absolutely, I'd run something in it. Already know what I'd run. Oh, interesting. You have me intrigued, my friend. Yeah. So there you go. Phil says the Wizard's Test was really cool. The choice of roles having different spells was also such an amazing RP tool. Victor, Dark Sun, Dark Sun, Dark Sun. PHP, Dragonborn section, sidebars, Draconians when it talks about different settings. Huh? Okay. They're also known as, in these worlds, Dragonlance ICRPG. I would buy that. That's never going to happen, Ty. Unless you port it yourself. I have it on good authority that Spelljammer is in the making. So, Dragonlance. I might pick up the new novels. I mean, Tracy and Margaret have written a lot more books since those early days. So, it is interesting. I should find out what their kind of, nobody's talked about Tracy and Margaret very much. We talked about Dragonlance, and there's interview shows about, you know, the origins. We know Joe Manganiello is a huge fan and all this, but, you know, and it had to have been the TSR thing. If it weren't for TSR, Dragonlance would never become a bigger deal. Like Tracy and Margaret. And the reason I say that is I don't know how many books they had published prior to that. I don't, you know. And for an author to for me to write my first book and have it hit the New York Times best-selling list would probably be a pretty hard thing to do. So, Jay says, my bro play tested new Spelljammer for WotC about 9 months ago. Don't tell WotC I said that. As I read it out on air. Now they have to figure out who your brother is. Good morning. Where'd Wayne come in here? Oh, he did. Hey, Wayne. So yeah, you're probably a little bit behind, Phil. So he says, how so? In what sense? Some classes not fitting the setting. No, I think. Well, that's a good point. Right now, how do you do the wizards? They're red, black, white robed, right? So do you restrict domains and what one can do over the other? Do you keep the alignment system where in order to be neutral, you got to wear the red robes? There's always a struggle to take what might have been core to the setting and put it in a system that's been out for 7 years, 8 years. Perfect example is Eberron has, Dragonborn are not in Eberron natively originally when it came out. So when 5th edition says, oh, Dragonborn, it's like a core class, how do you fit that into Eberron? Now, you and I and many other people would say you just do it. It's no big deal. Keith Baker has said it. Eberron is unique to everybody who's running it and playing it. How you want to do it is up to you, which should be kind of the mantra for any role-playing game. Some more so than others, right? I think if you're maybe starting to go, I'm going to play Rangers of the Middenvale, but then you don't incorporate like what the Middenvale is, then maybe you're using some of the details out of that game, but are you playing that game? That's kind of a, whatever. So when you talk about a Dragonlance, I don't think there's that big a leap, right? Because it's still, there isn't as many things that you would have to necessarily convert. Really, think about it. What would be big changes? You can easily incorporate all the dragons from 5th edition, core classes and more, right? They kind of fit in there. That's still standard. Draconians, Dragonborn, whatever. So that's easy for the most part. Clerics would be tricky, although now they could say, the gods walk the land, clerics have the powers. There isn't heretics running around like it was originally, or they weren't fallen from the sky and their powers squashed. Some people don't like that about Dragonlance. Like, that's one thing that they cannot stand, is that the gods can just walk around like a normal person, which is a really interesting campaign choice, right? Because the part about Eberron is that they don't believe any of the gods would walk around that earth. Like Keith purposely did it that way, where they're very much more of a religious, I would say more of a religious concept. Not that Dragonlance would be less of a religious concept, but there's more, I say, like a spirituality and faith piece in maybe something like Eberron, where Dragonlance, it's like they walked around. They were like kind of beings. Hell, Raceland tried to ascend as one, right? So some people kind of, and of course you could play that any way you want, spin it any way you want, right? Yeah. Nubis cool. 5e Spelljammer book would be good for fluff. I like the multiverse, but would run it in a different system for sure. Wasn't Weiss Production doing some 3.5 or 4e Dragonlance gaming stuff? They did for 3.0. I don't know if it got into 3.5. 4th? Excuse me. I don't know if they had the ability to do it. I don't think there was a Dragonlance book for RPGs during the 4th edition era. I could be wrong. Wayne says, doubt WotC will really do Dark Sun. Without big edits, the rampant slavery motif is very hard to navigate. Yeah, they won't do Dark Sun. No one would say a word. Promise. Yeah, right. Going back to Michael. Hope they fix the gully dwarves. I fix them. They're broken. Victor, I remember a bunch of butthurt people were Dragonborn in Eberron when it happened. Yeah. So going back to that, like there's, the dragon marks in Eberron is a perfect example too. So you have dragon marks in 3.5 or 3.0, and they're done and handled a specific way, and they all align with a house, and each house is usually a particular ethnicity or race. And you picked the dragon mark as you would, okay, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to play a dragon mark, whatever. And then you would have these dragon mark powers because you're part of this house. I can't remember the nuances of the mechanics from 3.5, but in going to 5th edition, they were like, I think it was a lot of feats involved. And with 5th edition, feats are kind of the optional thing. So how do you take something that's core to Eberron that's usually based on feats mechanically, and then port it to 5th edition where feats usually aren't a thing? And that's some of the things I'm talking about with Dragonlance. I don't see as much as that of that in going from, what Dragonlance is as a setting and trying to, is there any futzing in the mechanics that you have to deal with because of how magic works or how, religion and healing spells work or what have you. Anyways, I have warlocks in mind who would be the patrons. Probably Tehekis, the queen, the dark queen, right? Tiamat. Guess. Who else would be? They could introduce all kinds of deities in Dragonlance. You could introduce any deity in any fantasy game. Because you could just have some guy walking around preaching some weird thing, right? Shocker. Hey, like it hasn't happened, right? That preaches a religion and gets it, to be prosperous. Like that would be a role-playing piece, right? In some fantasy game. Like 5th edition, I want a cleric that where is the cleric that his sole purpose is to spread the word of this god, right? And the mechanics of spreading the word and getting a parish and a following and power and all that stuff. Like is there a book out for that? Because that should be something somebody should be kind of nailing down, right? It just seems like the cleric as the religious practitioner of some of these fantasy games, specifically Dungeons and Dragons, kind of just seems like a wanderer of good heart, I guess, if you play him lawful good or neutral good. But if you think of like clerics or evangelists, what's really at the core of that? Eberron touched on some corruption about that, right? Because they tried to... One of the things that I liked and appreciated with Eberron is they still had the alignment system because alignment was still kind of core to D&D, and it still is. But they didn't want, I detect evil. Oh yeah, they're neutral evil. You detect evil. Okay, well, I smite them down because I'm a paladin and awful good and I got to get rid of all evil. They made that stuff really fuzzy. So one of the priests of the Silver Flame could be a neutral evil or a lawful evil priest, worshiping or portraying his love of the Silver Flame and the righteousness behind it. There's some parallels with the Silver Flame if you're not familiar with Eberron, but then I say parallels as in they're kind of fanatics. They did a purge on all of the shifters, and the shifters are like a race that you can play in Eberron that has kind of lycanthropy blood, right? So as a shifter, you have certain like physical characteristics, but then you can also shift and do some things because you have that type of blood in your system or heritage, however you want to say it. But the Silver Flame saw them as an abomination and wanted to kind of, do a genocide and get rid of all of them. So, why am I bringing this up and how did I get here? Oh, shit. Anyways. I guess I needed more sleep for this morning. I played late last night. Forbidden. I'm a wreck. I'm a mess. Forbidden Lands with the guys last night because the schedule moved. But I'll tell you a little bit about that later. Anyways, gods and seasons. Yeah, no orcs. No orcs? No. Or devils, elementals. Dragonlance never felt like a realm with devils and demons that you know of. I like how devils and demons kind of like the Lords of Dust and Eberron. Can you tell I'm a fan of Eberron? So much there. So much. Lords of Dust, the Rakshasas. That's what I put in Dragonlance. Rakshasas. These guys that are plotting, world-changing stuff. Yeah. Prophecies, whatever. The whole concept had the Greek mythology backbone for gods. Yes. They did Dark Sun. They moved the timeline. I think all of their settings, it will be the easiest port to 5e. Dragonlance, probably, yeah. Joswick, I put Fist and Dentalus into my realms. It was fun. Still haven't played Forbidden Lands, Eric? What's wrong with you, man? See you later, Joe. All right. Back to some other stuff, right? What else is on the docket? Let's see. Phoenix Wright-inspired tabletop RPG Justicar lets you roleplay as an ace attorney, judge, or suspect. I think this was just one of the ones we just went over. Justicar, yeah. Players defend clients as the ace attorney by uncovering evidence, drawing conclusions, and shouting objection a lot. And in a 1992 murder trial comedy from My Cousin Vinny. Tabletop RPG forgoes a conventional single game master in favor of 4 roles filled by the players. Sounds interesting and fun. All right. Anybody looking at that one? Release, digital and physical release plan for the summer. All right, cool. Probably not one I'm gonna pick up myself, but who knows? Never know. Vaesen Central Discord server presents. This one came across the radar. It got posted on our Discord. Figured I'd let everybody else know about it. We just dropped our episode this morning to patrons that Brett and I did about episode 378 about Vaesen. So we recorded that Monday live on YouTube, thegamingnbs.com/YouTube channel. Talked about Vaesen. I don't know if we said a terrible thing about that book or the game. There's a lot of good stuff in it. If you haven't explored it, I would highly recommend it. It's for those that Brett and I would say are wanting a more curated experience where there is relationships within the game, the mechanics and the setting, where this is kind of how it's set up. And how the Vaesen work. And we say curated because, you have to download the episode or go watch the video. It will explain it there. But anyways, this came across where it's a gaming con online for Vaesen specifically. So like a single game con, not unheard of, right? The Goodman Games folks does one that's probably all DCC. Well, they have Mutant Crawl Classics too. But June 10th to the 12th, weekend of playing Free League's Gothic Horror role-playing game online. Player signups are from 21 May to 4 June. We got Matthew Sanderson from the Jackson Elias podcast. and has authored for Call of Cthulhu and Trail of Cthulhu and Vampire. It's going to be one of the guests. So that's an interesting one. Maybe I will sign up for a game to play and then see how that goes and run a game myself. I do have the book. It's good. I haven't gotten into the British and Irish piece yet. That's going to come out from their most recent Kickstarter. But, and I don't think this is necessarily something from Freely. I think it's just a community thing that of fans of Vaesen. So if you haven't looked into Vaesen, just if you like Nordic horror games, I don't think it has to be Nordic, honestly. You could place it in the U.S., Victorian era, maybe a little later, 19th century, right? And make a library, because the library, or the headquarters, if you will, that has the library, put that in somewhere. It could be this. I mean, it could all take place in Philadelphia or something during the 19th century. Fit right in. Is anybody interested in going to that? I don't know. Got some Vaesen fans in the chat, I know. All right. 4 new role-playing books coming from Osprey. Excuse me. This one from Beasts of War by Benny the Jew. Or Brennan. Maybe he goes by Brennan. Because I see Brennan here, and then I see... Okay. No. Anyways. Osprey Games have a whole lot of role-playing content lined up. Grand Meccanismo, Clock Punk, role-playing in Da Vinci's Florence. Clock Punk. It's a role-playing game of swashbuckling swordplay where Florence's winding alleys swarm and sinister Venetian spies and Milanese mercenaries as an army of robot knights marches past on their way to the Vatican. Players are patricians, mercenaries, spies, and inventors amidst the Renaissance Italy, where they may find themselves crossing wits with Machiavelli, avoiding the charms of Lucrezia Borgia, and hearing Christopher Columbus tell you about the new world he has discovered. Other one, Neon Noir and Classic Noir role-playing. The Crescendo of Violence by Alan Barr. Alan's put out a good amount of RPGs. This one's 2093 New York, dystopian technological marvel where concrete high-rises brim with holographic neon. As gilded mob bosses, flashy CEOs, and famous vid stars all strive to consolidate their power over the masses. And while the rain reflects the neon, it never washes away the grim and filth of the streets. Okay, all right. Hard City, Nathan Russell. Hard City character creation is swift and simple, generating competent yet flawed individuals and focusing on what stems them apart as they walk the fine line between right and wrong. Fast action resolution places the emphasis on the momentum of the plot, while the sandbox setting provides evocative hooks for adventurers, fight crooks, rescue the innocent, thwart blackmail plots or start them, or uncover corruption in the mayor's office. Interesting. Jackal's expansion. Travelers on the Road. Supplement exploring the regions of the Zarets, the cultures established in jackals. So if you're familiar with jackals, here's a supplement for you. There's some interesting ones from Osprey. Osprey could be, maybe they become like the next Free League, where a lot of their stuff's like just flying off the shelves and are awesome. Boy, tough landscape, man. Oh boy, here's one. You guys are gonna love this. I didn't get into all the talk on this one. Paizo, Pathfinder Adventure Path, Abomination Vaults. One of Pathfinder's most popular and exciting campaigns comes to 5e. I am not familiar with this campaign, but I lost touch of a lot of what they were doing over at Paizo when 5th edition came out. The AP still continued. But has anybody like has anybody checked out this Abomination Vaults AP Adventure Path? I think the ones that I lost, it's who knows how after, like the Jade Serpent. I don't remember. Lost touch a long time ago with the Adventure Pass. Paizo has put out great adventure paths for a long time, since Rise of the Rune Lords in the 3-5 days. And I kind of wish they had done some more conversions of their older adventure paths to 5th edition. I'm still wondering where Kingmaker 5th edition is. I can't find an update on that. And I know that whoever was doing it, I don't know if it ever got delivered. I don't know if you can even buy it. If you didn't get it on the Kickstarter, you might be SOL. But I know Kingmaker was one of their better adventure paths because I love the premise of Kingmaker. And there's a lot of people that really loved it for the same reason, which was you were given, a writ to go and explore the Barren Lands. Is it the Barren Lands? I think it was a part of Golarion. And I guess you could call it a hex crawl as it kind of started out. And then you would come across these certain things and, you'd build a kingdom, but I think a lot of people's beef with Kingmaker was like the math. There was a subsystem involved on how that kingdom worked and had some dependencies across different things. And some people used Excel spreadsheets to keep track of all that stuff. So probably a little more labor intensive in that regard, but still nonetheless, the whole premise. And I think I kept Kingmaker for a long time here in hopes I could just, mine it for stuff. Rise of the Rune Lords being one of the first series. A lot of people played that. They re-released it as an anniversary edition, taking the 6 96-page books and put them all together. Probably updated a few things. And that sold pretty well. As a matter of fact, Rise of the Rune Lords, when they originally put that out, and I think what it was they converted it to Pathfinder. Because originally it wasn't. It was for 3.5. So they re-released an anniversary edition and ported it to Pathfinder, their game system. And it did really well. And they have now Rise of the Rune Lords for Savage Worlds. So Paizo's starting to do some interesting stuff. They have been doing interesting things, but they have been doing more with some third parties, which is interesting. And I didn't know, like I said, I wish they would done more for 5th edition. I think they would have really been, I think it wouldn't have hurt their company. I don't know how they would have balanced that. How do they have their own game? They obviously want to write their own adventures so people would buy their own game, right? That makes sense. But man, if they just had like a dedicated team for porting that to 5th, I wonder what that would look like for Paizo. I wish I would have some insight into their numbers on how many books of Pathfinder 2, 2nd edition, has done in the marketplace, as well as some of their supplements that support that game. And then you take that number and go, okay, let's take some of these adventure pass and release them also to 5th edition under their subscriber model, because I'm sure they probably still have that, and see how it does. I don't know, man. The 5th edition customer base is just huge. Just huge. And they got the talent to do that. Like, they could be the premier 5th edition adventure house. Like, Cobalt Press probably holds that. Maybe. How many adventures they do? I know they have a few, but they've also published some games some books for Wizards. So Cobalt Press is definitely holding their own. There's no question about it. But man, I don't know. Is that a missed opportunity by Paizo? And there's, get me wrong, man. There are some that are probably still just burned up by the pulling of Dragon and Dungeon magazines and then having the 4th edition fiasco. But out of that came Pathfinder. You know? So somebody's loosening up there and saying, I think we should just do this for 5th edition and see what happens. So there was like Jason Bowman, Milwaukee native. Eric knows him. Guy behind Pathfinder originally and 2nd edition. Still at Paizo. It's been there for years. And I think somebody was saying like he was online or something. He must have got wind of people speculating that Paizo's in trouble and that's why they're putting out a 5th edition product. So I want to bring that up because it's ridiculous. You know, Paizo can put out a 5th edition product and not be in dire straits as a company. I doubt that's even remotely close. And even if it is, that I don't know. I wouldn't put any weight into that at all. That's just ridiculous. And if they do put this out, it does really well. What does that mean? Do they do more? Like, it would only make sense, right? Follow the money. So exciting, I think. And, you know, who knows? With the kind of sunsetting of 5th edition eventually, would they... I don't know. It's a weird conundrum, because if they put out a 5th edition supplement and they, you know, you got to play it with D&D, then you're going to have the player's handbook and the DMG. So they're kind of saying, you know, go play our competitor's game, but here, take this adventure from us. Instead of like, hey, we want you to buy our game and get into our ecosystem. That's the trick. So, yeah. So going back to the chat, Eric running two blade streams, Pathfinder 2, Avatar, Witcher, and now Death in Space. You are an animal, man. Eric Frankhouse, Twitch celebrity. Eric Frankhouse. Totally, man. Totally. He's going to be playing with B. Dave Walters and all those guys in no time. Probably running them. He's probably running half those people through adventures now. He's like, I don't even know what he's doing here. I don't know what are you doing here? Like with this with me. Come on, man. You got a press conference somewhere or something? Come on. Victor says Vaesen could take place during the colonies era of the U.S. For sure, man. For sure. Detroit during the big boom. Yeah. Death in Space. I'm interested. I got that, or I'm in on it. So that'll be fun. Phil says, Sean, I should just run Vaesen on a night when we can't play AFL. Seems like something's coming around the corner for that, right? That'd be kind of cool. Can you do a one-shot really quickly? I mean, you won't have the leveling up piece and component, but I'd be down for that. Eric says, I'm looking forward to running it. I'm using a marathon timber for the audience to help stop bad things from happening. And a marathon timer, not timber. Not to be mistaken for marathon timber. Yeah. Dude, Free League, it's crazy. It's just crazy. I don't know. It's hard to hate their stuff. Like, you might not care for it, but it's hard to hate it for sure. Like, and I don't hate too many things anyway out there. There's certainly things that are not my jam. There is, I can appreciate the indie scene. I really can. Like, they've got some of the best stuff of role-playing games have come out of the indie scene for sure. Zine, anything from zine size to just, the vampire, 1,000-Year Vampire, beautiful book, solo play, just exquisite. It truly is a piece of work. And then I look at some games that are just like, play a gardener and see how many crops you can raise, and battle with the greenskeeper, and it's like, it's too crazy. Some of this stuff is just too off the wall. And there Dennis Detwiller, who is not one to hold back. He's one of the authors and artists for Delta Green. And if you follow him on Twitter, man, he can be very much spit and vinegar for sure. No holds barred. Like, he just tells it like it is. And if you don't like it, you can just shove off. And he will be sure to tell you. He made a tweet one time, and I think there was this like the dialogue, give it for what it's worth, is Twitter, right? So, but there was this group of folks that said, Wizards in 5th edition, they need to be not a monopoly. They're a monopoly, and it's squashing the market, and it doesn't give us any latitude to sell our books and put them out there and da 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 da. And Dennis was just like, nobody wants to buy your, gardener, raising crops and battling with landscapists role playing game. He had something else, a different. Like, you play as a squirrel that's a gardener who battles with landscapists. I don't know. It was just this weird kind of like stuff that, and those games I'm not remotely interested in. Although Mouse Ritter looks pretty cool. I don't know. What are you going to do? But it's the indie ethereal, like, I don't know. Would I want to play that game? I don't know. Maybe. There's a whole discussion around that. Anyways, maybe you love it. That's fine. Good. Great. Just not my jam. Our dungeon crawl is fun in 5th edition. Who knows? I guess it depends on who's running it and how you run it. I think they can be, but how fun's a dungeon crawl? Does it matter if it's 5th edition, Matthew? Here, I'll pose it to you. Do you think dungeon crawls are fun, regardless of system? Now, which system and why? And then you take that and say, well, 5th edition, they don't have that, whatever. So if you say, yeah, I like it doing it in OSE or BX because this is how the game runs. It's rulings over rules, la, 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 la. There's no skill list. There's no skill check. Maybe the DM has you roll under just to see if something happens or not, or a D6, Is that fun? And if you say, yeah, that's a blast, then why wouldn't it be fun in 5th edition? Is it just because it's like got the skill list and then you roll and there's a DC and yada, yada? I don't know. Tough question. A lot to unpack there. Air Frankhouse, Ring, Kingmaker, or Ring, Rise, Kingmaker, Vaults, AB Vaults, and Wraith are the big ones. Oh, okay, interesting. Those are their top 4, right? Okay, that's good to know. I'd like to know because they got a lot, right? Some are all right, and some will hey, Curse of the Crimson Stone, Curse of the Crimson Throne. Fantastic. It's awesome. It's got this vibe. And each adventure path for Pathfinder does have a bit of a vibe depending on where it's set in Golarion, because Galarion's got these unique countries in it that have kind of their parallels to, there's one that's obviously Gothic based. I can't remember, right? This all escapes me. There's one that's very like Victorian in its garb and cultures and, whatever. So there's different places in Galarian where if you want to set Ravenloft, you just plop it in that country and you're fine, right? No big deal. So anyway, I'm interested to know a little bit more about those 4. I know Rise because I've had that one and I've read it. Kingmaker, I know the premise, but the AB Vaults, Abomination Vaults, I have not, and Wraith. It'd be interesting to know a little bit more. Nubis 5e has no rules for dungeon crawling as far as I know, so it depends on what kind of dungeoneering you find fun, right? You don't mind lots of handwriting. God, I should just leave right now. Hand waving, it works well enough. We'll see more come out as 5e. I mean, to like put this out, pre-order October 2022, that thing's got to be fairly baked. So we'll see. And maybe they're doing it now because here's something that just entered my mind. Maybe they're doing it now that 5th edition is winding down because the market is saturated with 5th edition. So by putting these supplements out isn't really going to increase Wizards' sales of 5th edition. Therefore, with good conscience, Paizo can put these out knowing they're not contributing to the sales of 5th edition. I'm telling you, I think I'm onto something there, right? Well, they're not going to sell any more of that model car, so, we can just make all the parts for them. I think that's, yeah. And the thing is Paizo didn't even put out Path or Kingmaker for 5th. That's, whoosh. Anyways, and I know Eric knows. I know he talks to those guys. So his speculation is it's probably under NDA too. Arrogance, stopping by. Hey, good morning, buddy. I haven't figured out Osprey's full court RPG press yet. Yeah, I don't know. Brian Kurtz, good to see it. Probably not the value of Cobalt Press, but maybe a model for Paizo for how to do 5e plus your home system. Goodman Games puts on both the 5e and DCC stuff. That's true. Goodman Games should not be left out of that lumping of doing good 5e products. For sure. Some of the conversions, all right? Matthew, let's see. Monty Cook Games has put out 5e product as well. True. Good point. Yeah, you kind of gotta, if you are a Monty Cook Games, Cobalt Press, Paizo, you got your games, right? Pathfinder 2, Cypher System, Numenera. You've got Cobalt Press has all got supplements. They don't have a game that they're writing for. Green Ronin maybe do some 5th edition too. But you got to think that if you put out one book for 5th edition, how much does it outsell anything? Like, does Monty Cook outsell his Numenera 5th edition version more than his own? That would be an eye-opener, right? Like, I gotta go home and rethink my life. I don't know. We'll never know. Yeah, it's to draw in audience members you don't have, for sure, right? You're hoping to, maybe somebody buys your Numenera 5th edition book. Symbaroum, same thing. Symbaroum for Free League. Free League's not, immune to that. Hey, let's put out a fantasy book for 5th edition. What should we use? Should we do something different? No, just take Symbaroum and convert it to 5th edition and put it out there. You already got the lore. It's all awesome. Everybody loves it. And then somebody gets that and then goes, what is all this other stuff that Free League has? I want to try this. Hopefully that's what occurs to these companies. I got to imagine there's some play in that. I don't know if it's the windfall though. Man, some people are rooted in some of these systems. Like, I'm not going to play anything. And that's for any any system, honestly. There are folks that are Pathfinder till they die. There's some folks that are, OSR, whatever that means, BX till they die. So you're never going to convert them, but they may pick up these books. So, I don't know. Eric says, better question, what makes a dungeon crawl fun? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. See you, Phil. NDAs are life. There's very little bleed between fan base. Cypher buys Cypher, and people want something new for 5e. Pick up your Numenera book. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. What else? What else we got going on here? All right. Handmaid's Tale in 1984 inspired this tabletop role-playing game. Dark Nation is inspired by the likes of The Handmaid's Tale in 1984. This is by Dicebreaker, an article I found on dicebreaker.com. A tabletop RPG in which player characters find themselves living under an oppressive state. Dark Nation takes inspirational cues from the likes of Margaret Atwood's seminal novel The Handmaid's Tale, which has also since been adapted into a television series, George Orwell's surveillance state book 1984, and The Man in the High Castle, a comic book series and television show about an alternative future in which the Nazi regime conquers the USA, and the UK TV series SSGB about a Nazi-occupied Britain. Dark Nation. Oh man, where is it? I'm not going to go through this page because it's probably deep somewhere else. For Game Master's core rulebook for Dark Nation features the tools they need to plan and run the RPG, such as structured guide for writing plots, which may feature topics of oppression, discrimination, or other sensitive issues that GMs will need to warn their players about, as well as safety tools for GMs. What system? Is there a system? Dark Nation was created by Martin Lloyd, the creator of fantasy role-playing games Amazing Tales and Amazing Heroes, and a writer for series such as Wrath and Glory and Age of Sigmar. That Kickstarter's coming April 11th, 2022. PDF copy in April as well. So that's got to be almost fully baked. Here it is. Built on the Cthulhu Dark Horror RPG system, Dark Nation sees players rolling a collection of D6 dice for a variety of circumstances. Sometimes players will roll a disillusion die, which determines how far the player characters believe the state's lies and how far they're willing to go to uncover them. Ooh, all kinds of stuff, man. All right. Other times players will roll to see whether their investigator knows someone who could help them with the particular problem they're facing, whilst the fail forward has the player attempting to overcome the obstacle themselves, often with minimal success. All right, okay. All right. Okay. Cortex Prime, second pass at the community license. Herman, are you still in there? Hello, Herman? Herman, House, Cortex rule system expert. 4 months has passed since Cortex revealed 2 new creator licenses and caused a critical backlash. It's on Dicebreaker. So they released their community license. People threw their arms up and said, "What's this? Do we own any of the stuff if we create something? Does fandom take ownership? What the hell?" So, man. November 30th was the Kickstarter campaign page for the core rulebook. That's where they announced it. They explained the legal documents were the first part of building an inclusive creator ecosystem that would live on a yet unreleased Cortex Prime digital platform where amateur designers would share and ostensibly sell their games. So the There was vague language, lack of clarity around ownership of anything created under the community license. So they have Cortex Prime Non-Commercial License version 2, which addresses these and other concerns via an FAQ from Fandom Tabletop Community Manager Melly Doucette. So it explains that the expression of rules will be shared by anyone else using the non-commercial license. Your game, product, text, and all of your IP, names, places, situations, stories, lore, art, and fiction remain your own, according to the document. The example provided is a modification of Cortex's Prime's Doom Pool mechanic called Storm Pool in the document, which can be lifted out of a game by another designer if they feel it fits their own intentions. Interesting. It's all kind of stuff in here. So if you are a fan of Cortex and you are going to write community stuff, this thing you got to know. You got to know. If you sell it, what are you getting into? So at least they addressed it. Maybe it's better. At least it spells that out. Like, here's the deal. You own all your stuff. You just got to give us attribution. Maybe they take a cut if it's hosted on their store. I don't know. But there you go. Some news there. Oh, let's see. What's this one? Here's interesting. This is just a tweet. Hey, Ty, make your own. Put monsters in there. Drag the card on Twitter. We need to normalize letting DMs admit to their players when they've screwed up. Quote, I accidentally made this magic sword too powerful / this boss fight too easy / this mystery too hard. End quote. Picks up another one. Do you mind if we nerf it? Take 2 minutes to rebalance / retcon in a clue. And as a corollary, making a mistake does not make you unprepared or unready. Everyone makes mistakes. Cowards try to cover it up. It takes courage and honesty to try to fix them. I didn't know I was a coward. I think that's a little harsh. Drama. Yeah. Are we too hard on DMs? On ourselves? For admitting mistake, if we have a mistake and we made a screw up? I think the lesson here is don't screw up, right? Oh man, this one I think got quite a bit of. Let's see, is there a link on here that I could? Oh, there's nothing linked. I think I take me right to the link. Here it is. It's a pretty decent amount. Now, why does Twitter do this? Because I know that's not all the same thread. Does it? Is it? No. Show more replies. Puts more tweets down below. Has nothing to do with the freaking replies. Oh, it does that. Anyways, it has 800 likes, 99 retweets. So I think there was another tweet out there that said, who was it? Have a game, tweet, crickets, do a hot take on 5th edition, hundreds of likes by a person that has 10 followers. That's Twitter. Kind of reminds me of this. They got a lot of discussion around this. Oh no, last thing you want is for DM themselves to take you out of immersion and retcon what you're invested in real time. Do it in between sessions or while consulting the rule book in-game or mid-encounter. That's fine, but don't retcon on your players and sap their investment. Or if you're going to, just do it. My experience with newbie DM player during Adventure League module was him going, "Oh, I got that part wrong." We said nothing happily and just ran with it, so we get our adventure Saturday morning and get our XP and items D&D weekend from work and have fun just playing. So yeah, good discussion. These are not these right here. It just keeps going. Had to stop our table once and be like, real talk, guys, this college we're at, it's not the adventure I've got. There's nothing here to do, and you all got what you needed. So if you're all cool with it, we'll head somewhere else. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting conversation or tweet because is it that big a deal? Here's my take. I would try, me personally, I think I'd try to fix things in the narrative, in the game, through the game. I don't know if that's possible all the time. I did that with Jeff during Tomb of Annihilation when Revivify shouldn't have worked. So I did a side effect where it worked. I didn't want to go back and undo it. Like, oh, by the way, your character's really dead. Revivify should have never worked. So I think it's a case-by-case basis, isn't it? I'm all about admitting my mistakes in life. Trust me. Just ask my boss. You'd be surprised how I even have a job anymore. But, if it's a matter of like, here's the thing with, even with Tomb of Annihilation, Andy's character got the Ring of Frost. Is that the big one in there? It's not a Ring of Frost. What's the ring? There's an artifact in that adventure. If you don't want your party to get the artifact, don't put the artifact in the adventure. Don't put it on a guy's ring that they're all going to succumb or subdue and then chop off his finger and grab that ring. Ring of Winter, I think it was. Anyways, so how could I retcon that? Oh man, it's too powerful. I don't want to give it to you. Can you give it back? Yeah. Because Twitter is horrible. Arrogant, yeah. Most mistakes can be turned into something amazing, Eric says. Eric doesn't make mistakes. You cannot tell me Eric Frankhouse of Eric Frankhouse Presents renowned GM you can't tell me you make mistakes, man. No way. I don't believe it. Just like a doc, due to complications, we had trouble with the operation. So we've all screwed up as game masters, but are we too afraid to say it, to stop it? Hey, hold on a second. I really messed up. There's no way you guys should have this ring. Hey, this spell should have never worked. But it did. It can be an anomaly. If it doesn't line up with the story, like, oh, there's a death plague. Why does this spell work? I mean, I guess I met him halfway, right? Instead of saying, hey, just so you know, retcon, we got to kill your guy because that spell would have never worked. So instead of doing that, I did some side effects. The player needs to know, maybe not, maybe. The thing is if I would have let Revivify kind of stand as is and never did anything, I don't think the entire party realized like, oh, the death curse prevents people from being like their souls coming back to their body after they've been dead and living on. right? So I don't think any of the party realized that, like, this thing shouldn't have worked. So when I brought it up, I could have just said no. I could have just not brought it up. And I did to some degree, but I felt I needed to explain so that the player understood, in this case, Jeff, kind of understood what was going on. Because he was kind of torqued. Like, he just wanted his guy to die. Like, if you're just going to keep sucking my constitution every time, or I'm going to level at half speed, or I'll level, but the hit points I get are going to be capped at half. You know, that was kind of as time went on, you weren't living like a normal person because of the plague. The death curse specifically. So once they get rid of it, then it could probably save that character from getting into maybe a frail old man. I don't think that was bad. So I didn't have to tell him why I did it. It had just been, here's the deal. You're revivified, you're up. And then every time, oh, by the way, why is that happening? You know, sometimes I think part of Dragon Carta's quote about kind of messing up as a game master is, what is the mess up? You know, there's a difference between saying, oh, shoot, man, this treasure shouldn't have had 50 gold pieces. It only has 10, or it's 50 silver, not 50 gold. Players be like, oh, whoops, you know, not a big deal. But, oh, by the way, your character should have died. Or you shouldn't have that artifact because it's too powerful. I don't know. But also at the same time, if you say, hey, I'm not playing for that. I didn't expect you to, like that one example where it's like, hey, you guys are in this library. It's not part of the adventure. I don't have anything written up for it. You got the information you needed. Can we move on? Because sometimes players will just keep going down that road. That may not be bad, right? Or you go, okay, I need a break because I don't have anything planned for this, and then, you know, got to cut it short. We're, you know, we still have an hour left of the session, but I'd like to cut it here so that I can get something else, and then riff off of the mistake that you made and just keep going. Because a lot of the players aren't going to know you made a mistake unless you tell them you did. And they may even say, oh, you know what? Sean made a big mistake. He allowed me to have that ring, or made that mistake like Jeff should have died. Well, did I? Maybe I wanted them to have the ring. Maybe I wanted the character to live, but not, you know, there's repercussions. So I thought it was an interesting tweet. Because it's such a simple thing. Like Dragna Carta. I keep saying Dragon Carta. It's Dragna Carta. You know, we need to normalize letting DMs admit to their players when they screwed up. Do we? I don't think it should be a penalty. I don't think it should be like, oh my God, you so screwed up, man. Let's put it out on the freaking Twitterverse. How crappy of a game master you are. You know, it's not that. I don't think we're that bad, right? As players. Oh my God. Might snicker, like, gave me this wand of 3 wishes. Mistake, dungeon master. Oh, man. Just play with it. Also, MDK is always an option. Yeah. Eric says, I don't usually pause a game if they go in an odd direction. I usually play it out and plant the things I need them to learn where they went. Smoke and mirrors. For sure. Eric, king of smoke and mirrors. We need to normalize letting DMs admit to their players when they screwed up. We need to. I say to you, Dragnacarta, what's the lesson here? Don't screw up. Don't make a mistake. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Depends on what the situation is. Sean, what do you think when it is easy to see the game master treated the players a death of the NPC because they wanted to keep him around? Okay, Ty, hold on a second. Let me absorb that. See you, Harrigan. Good to see you, man. Have a good weekend. When it's easy to see the game master treated the players a death of the NPC, prevented the death of a NPC because they wanted to keep him around? Just listening to you say that out loud hurts my eyes. Ears. Oh, man. Ty, you got to clear that up for me. What are you talking about? What do I think when it's easy? Waiting for Ty. He's frantically typing. Clearing that up. Let me know. I want to answer that question. There's a question there I want to answer. Oh boy. It's all news. News, releases, what's going on. This, circling back to this one, Hasbro said to reject settlement offer from investor AltaFox. So a few weeks ago, a while now, AltaFox has a 2.5% stake in Hasbro. And privately indicated to the toy maker it would settle for new. Oh my God. Come on, we need to write this stuff better. 2 new directors, as long as one of them was one of AltaFox's nominees, according to Reuters. So Hasbro rejected giving AltaFox any of its nominees. Multiple conversations. Hasbro told Reuters in a statement that it had multiple conversations with AltaFox to listen to views and attempt to come to a resolution of this campaign. AltaFox has argued that Hasbro could double its valuation by spinning off the unit that houses the Dungeons & Dragons business. The activist believes the business would be around $13 billion. That's crazy. That is really crazy. Video games will get, there, but $13 billion of D&D? Woo. Anyways, so that's the update. Hasbro's like, hey, settle down now. So I figured I'd circle back to that one. Cheated death, Ty says. Sean, what do you think when it's easy to see the GM cheated death? When GM treated the players, cheated a death of the NPC? So the game master, oh, I see. Got it. I think I know what you're saying. Party comes in, kills the opposing group of bandits, what have you, ne'er-do-wells, and then keeps one alive, or they wanted to keep one alive, but they killed them all, right? When the GM cheated the players the death of the NPC because the GM wanted to keep them around. That is different. How do you do it? Here's another lesson. Eric's going to love this. Eric knows how to handle all this stuff, man. He's a good game master. If you don't want your NPC to die, don't put him in a place that he can die, he or she, or it, whatever it is. Just don't do it. Put him way in the back. Put 50 obstacles in front of him. Plenty of NPCs, minions, whatever. Battle breaks out. Second round, that person's got to go. They leave. They're not going to win standing there. If you want them to stand there and grandstand and say, hey, this is my shining moment, I'm the big bad evil guy, and you keep them in there, that's the risk you take, and they kill them. It's just that, I don't know. I see that as pretty easy. So for game masters that are, they killed him in one shot. I can't believe that. Then you got to kind of be a fan of the players. You should always be a fan of the players, but you also want to make it interesting and challenging and all that good stuff. I say that very flippantly and very kind of easy, and it's not necessarily, but I think if you know this kind of rule, then that's you'll be fine. You don't have to correct something if you don't give the players the opportunity to do it. I don't know. Because here's the thing. Here is the thing. I'm trying to get away from it myself. The struggle is real, my friend. If you don't want your evil character to die, and you pull the punch and say, you didn't kill him, you got away, whoo. Strahd may be different because Strahd can turn into gaseous form below a certain amount of hit points. Poof. And then they leave. There's an in-game piece that's the deal with vampires. Or whatever. As long as they have the ability to do it and they're not jumping outside or inside initiative or breaking a rule necessarily. But even then, some people are like, well, that's kind of the game master's shtick if they want to do that, right? And that's what a vampire would do, right? That's what a vampire would do and has the ability to do it. So that isn't like a heavy-handed game master saying, you can't kill my vampire because I don't want him to die yet. I mean, that's like a logical explanation. Vampires are highly intelligent. They're not stupid. So they're going to know, like, hey, I got to get out of here. Poof, right? But if it's a game master where it's like they got an evil, big bad evil guy, and the players are like, we got the drop on him, and they do some very tactical things, you are one person against 4 to 6 players. They're going to come up with some interesting ideas. And if you keep squashing them, they're going to get pissed off. If you're just going to squash them because you don't want your evil guy to die, then they're going to get pissed off. So the whole GM mentality in the example that you're pointing out, Ty, is that the GM, it tells me that the game master has a particular story that they want to tell, and it's not told yet, so they don't want the players to ruin it for them. That is a GM mentality that I think I look at all the time through my games, or I try to. We sometimes as game masters slide into our comfort zones again, but game masters, I think, have to go back to the days, whenever that is, whether it's yesterday or 20 years ago, where you put the players, you provide the situations to the player characters, and you have to maybe remove what you want to have happen and just put it in front of them and have them deal with it. And you're, as a game master, hopefully playing within the bounds of the game mechanics and the scenario that you put forth. And as long as you're kind of working within the box, I think then you're fine. And the players aren't going to go, you're pulling punches, or, hey, I can't believe you did that. That's heavy, handed. That's ridiculous. That we played these rules for this long and now you're going to change it for this situation just because you don't want your precious darling to die. Kill your darlings. That's what they say, right? So we have to get rid of that. I think you have to just, what happens? And sometimes as game masters, we get these long, drawn out stories that are to be so cool. They're so cool. And when it doesn't go that way, we're like, this so sucks. Oh, it so sucks. My game's complete mess now. It's not, though. The players probably are having a blast. They're overcoming obstacles they're putting in front of them. And that's kind of the deal. And maybe they're not. And that's okay. I don't know, man. I think we get these things in our brains, and when it doesn't go the way we want them to, it's a weird dynamic. You know, there are games that say you gotta be a fan of the players, like it's spelled out in the game. And the whole mantra is to have everybody have fun at the table, including the game master. And then the one would say, but the way I have fun is if I have a big bad evil guy and he or she doesn't die, and I get to grandstand and monologue and, you know, get to pull the triggers behind the scenes, and then every once in a while make a cameo. That's what's fun for me as game master. You could still do that, but then you have to make sure that you can pull that off in a way that's not, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? It's, I think when GMs get flustered, there might be a couple reasons, and one of them is a player trying to leverage certain things, and the game master saying, well, you know, it's like a player always trying to get 5 actions out of combat. It's like, no, you can't always do that. Some game masters might let it fly, rule cool, not a big deal. But there are players that will try to inherently manipulate the situation in order to further their thing. And I don't think that's uncommon. I think you just have to understand how to handle that. Which is always a challenge. Where am I going with this? Man. But I think with the player piece in the GM frustration, is it that big a deal that they get it? They could take care of those things. Who's calling me at this time? Probably want my warranty. Ugh. Anyways. Eric says, not sure the last time I stopped them from killing an NPC. If I played the NPC in a way that they killed him, then I messed up. Right. Let them kill the NPC. There are always more. The saying, it can always be worse, is how I handle the death of an important NPC. Right. Ty says, when the GM cheated the players, the death of the NPC because the GM wanted to keep him around. Okay, read that. Sorry. Catching up. Bringing in a worse version of that NPC. Yeah. Bringing in another total bad guy that dead NPC was working for. You know, 10th level. If you're in a level-based system, it's like, oh, the 5th level guy is working for a 10th level guy. Bring in the 10th level guy. You know, Curse of Strahd is an interesting one because at first level, they could actually interact with Strahd. I mean, when I left the Curse of Strahd campaign, I had two guys enter his carriage. The rest of the party was kind of skirting around like, hey, you guys go and distract him. We're going to run away over this way. And 2 guys got in his carriage. You know, Strahd isn't like a wolf. You know, he's not an animal. He's a highly intelligent creature. So, you know, he could use these guys for things. So his instinct isn't to kill them outright, regardless if they're first level. For Strahd, they could be first level or 20th level. You know, unfortunately, we got this level power creep in games like 5th edition, right? But if you play a kind of what I would say a smart game, you play it a lot differently. But yes, like Eric said, throw an NPC out. If you're willing to lose them, then you put them in that situation, they kill them, yay, good for you. But there's somebody probably behind that guy. That's worse. And maybe they make it an appearance. Right? Put the big smackdown. But here's the deal. With 5th edition, it's hard to kind of do the, hey, I'm the big bad and I'm going to grandstand because of action economy. Now, you know, you got the CR and layer actions, but still, like D&D 5th edition, 6 guys on one person, it's not going to go well. And some of the rules is, hey, how are they going to cast the spell if they're in melee? Well, then they got to do this, And, oh, by the way, they got to have concentration. So they're kind of, they can't have multiple spells going off because it requires concentration, and that's how that affects things. So you got to set it up the proper way, I would say. Contingency plans, Vampire 101. Yeah. Eric, give it to them if they take them down. Reward the play. Then have a contingency where they blow up their HQ, capture their man contacts, put a bounty on their heads. Yeah. Exactly, Sean. You making the dots and they are connecting them. Sometimes they have the power to add a dot. Yeah, for sure. The NPC did not die. It was his twin or clone. Ugh. Just let him die. Just let him die. Why are you going to I have to wonder why it's so important for this bad guy to live. Because they got to be, that's the thing, right? All the bad guys, Moriarty, the Nemesis, always out there plotting against us. G.I. Joe versus Cobra. Even though Cobra's an org. Cobra Commander, maybe, right? The leader. He's got a lot of minions. The Empire, Darth Vader, the Emperor. What if you were playing a Star Wars game, Sean, and they went to go kill the Emperor? What would you do? What? Victor says, let them die. Someone can attempt to avenge their death later. There's all kinds of answers after after the bad guy dies. But as a game master and as a player in that game, I wouldn't want it to be, oh, we killed him. Yeah, all right. And then you somehow decide oh, is their twin or it was a clone. Then you're sucking the wind out of their victory. Then it's kind of peeing on their sunny day. That would be something I would not advise doing. Oh, a twin. Got it. Oh, a clone. Sure. Maybe, but there's probably a more interesting thing. Let the players kill him. Kill that darling. It's okay. It'll be okay. But Eric says that's right. What are the repercussions of them killing that high level, influential? Sometimes the big bad evil guy, maybe not as big bad and evil as the next one. Be careful who you don't want in the hot seat, because things could even get worse. So how do they get worse? Yeah, they could avenge their death. It could be an evil, bigger, badder, more influential person. Bounty hunters get hired from somebody that oversaw them. Competition moves in. Maybe in this game, they have a influence over a region. And there is a competitor that loves that region. So you as the party get rid of that influential leader and a new one comes in. What does that mean? What does that look like? Because they may not even be big, bad, and evil yet. Maybe they're the good guys, right? They're the ones that maybe hired the party. But really, the party has no idea what their ulterior motives are. Then the story comes around in that capacity. Because now the players are the evil people. They don't even know it. They're doing the bidding of the emperor, right? Good stuff. But yeah, getting into heavy-handed yep, oh, kill my evil guy. Next game session, you get a letter from the big bad evil guy. Ha, you thought you defeated me. That was my evil twin. Player's going to see through that stuff. Just let him go. Let him go. Or don't put him in the position to get axed by the players. Because here's the deal. Say your big bad evil guy was in an encounter and they had a battle and he or she, it took down 2 party members and the 3 party members said, shit, we got to get out of here. And they run. With one of the other players says, no, I don't really want to die. Or, hey, I'm going to create another character and guess what their name is? So character 1 died. I guess I got to make up a new character. Guess what their name is? Character 1.2. Same class, same everything. There you go. Here, now you get to be part of the party. Like, then it's kind of, that's no good either, right? So does it work both ways? Don't suck wind. Because you're sucking wind. It's an old army thing when you're sucking wind. Man, you look like you're sucking wind. That one has not gone bye-bye for me. I love that saying, obviously. Ooh, I am sucking wind today. Oh, that's too funny. Eric says, like, if through are the big bad, others work for them, right? If Cobra Commander does the army continue? If Cobra Commander dies, does the army continue, right? Or the army does continue. I'd let the Emperor die, then bring Rey in as the true power. Yeah. Every time they win, Eric continues, it will be so much sweeter when you come back after them. Luke Cage and Cottonmouth. Eric says, my favorite opening session, I built up this big bad and all the planning and prep for the game. They were all ready to hunt him down, so I killed him in the opening scene. His minions cast Rey's dead. Anyways, Eric says, and turned the king they worked for the last campaign into the big bad. Yeah, man. That's good money there. Hoos, morning. Time is it? Holy cow. All right. Excellent. Sean is kicked that player from the table. Yeah, Marine Corps too, for sure. Who's suck and win. Anyways. Yeah, I hope that helps, Ty. You know, the struggle is real. Game Masters gonna game master. That should be a shirt too. Game Master's gonna game master. But they, you know, hopefully they'll learn over time. I don't know. And maybe that's just the way they deal. It's such an unfortunate way of approaching things because you can be so much more creative. I just think it's such a shortcoming in what the story could be if you just let the character die. It's okay. It's all right. You know, I guarantee the players, and this is, you know, nothing you can do as a player except for, you know, tell the GM, like, you know, it'd probably be more interesting if the guy died, but the GM's not going to see it that way. It's their darling. It's their, you know, there's a saying for it. Yeah, a saying I can't remember. Sandbagging and sucking wind. Yeah, sandbagging. Sandbagging's cards, right? Sandbagging, man. You're not putting out your true bids. All right. It is hard. I would say if you're playing in a game where the game master's doing that continuously and it's not a good thing, then, you know, I've said it before, sometimes playing in a game or playing with a group or people where your styles don't mesh, life's too short. Shitbird. All right. Holographic tabletop games on the way from Catan creators VR Scout. Are holograms the future of board games? Oh, okay, board game. Sorry, guys. Another board game. That's pretty cool, though. I don't think I can Can't really see. Can you see that? Flip out the kickstand and see into infinity. I don't know. That's kind of cool, right? Tilt 5 platform works using a variety of technology. Players use wand-like controllers to interact with virtual content brought to life on the game board. Yeah, here's the, look at these guys. We've seen this like demoed, was it HoloLens for the Microsoft in Minecraft, where they put on a HoloLens looking at a table and then the Minecraft blocks would appear on the table. Right? AR, alternate reality. Kind of a hybrid. That's what these guys with these glasses are looking at, right? Like that board on that table isn't there. I think that's, I don't know if VR is the way to go with D&D or tabletop role-playing games, but alternate reality, that might be where it's at, I think. Because then you can still be like, I want to create Dwarven Forge and make this cool dungeon, and I'm not restricted by a surface. And say that surface looks like it's about a 3x3 table. All right, 3x3.5 by 3.5 table, square table. Augmented, sorry, thanks, Who's. Augmented reality. And say they go to the edge, you just like scroll it back. So you can incorporate the miniatures and everything we love about tabletop role-playing games, but you don't need to own any of the miniatures. And you could have a ton of them. Like, sky's the limit. Is that too much for people? I pull up my character sheet. Here it is. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. And it could be still pen, paper, and dice, but they're all virtual. And it doesn't have to have like the video gamey aspects, right? Where it's like, some of it with augmented reality might even be more accepted than like a virtual tabletop in the 2D version, as long as it doesn't get video gamey. Like, I think that's some people's beef. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. It's board games. Somebody will do an open source, game of augmented reality. Trick is that everybody's going to have to be on the same system, which will always be interesting to see who comes out on top of the VHS beta wars of AR, VR. Let's see. What do we got? New tabletop RPG from Matt Mercer, Syndicult, sneak peek, Critical Role. Matt Mercer. This is coming out of Darrington Press, which is Critical Role's publishing piece division, right? Tabletop publishing company of Critical Role. Syndicult. Syndicult? Is a comma in there? No, I don't know. I think that's a typo. Anyways, underground syndicates vie for magical powers in a world of artifacts, mysteries, and crime. Interesting. Tease the comic panel from the book itself, meant to tease what the book will entail. The panel itself is innocuous, showing what appears to be an elaborately decorated briefcase, but the speech bubbles do highlight Syndicult's urban fantasy nature. Not only does it show spoken word balloons, but symbols to each one. While this can be used to determine who is speaking, the symbols themselves include a pair of sneakers with a dragon pattern on them, a smartphone, a pair of closed fists, and the face of a statue. What's in the briefcase? How will smartphones and social media play into a world of magic and the supernatural? That's that one. Cobalt Press. I think last week when I talked about... Oh, this wasn't one. I thought there was the Guide to World Building 2 that was coming out. Cobalt Guide to Combat. Essays. So Cobalt Guide 2, World Building. 2, Game Mastering. 2, Combat. They're anthologies. Anthologies? Essays, group of essays, and then edited. This one happened to be edited by Jana Silverstein, with essays from Wolfgang Bauer, Ed Greenwood, Jeff Grubb, Richard Peck, Chris Promise, Elizabeth Ann Scarborough, Steve Winter, many more. These are pretty good. I like these. Everybody kind of puts in their own 2 cents. They're not too long, and you can learn a little something from each one, I think. Cobalt Guide to Combat. I'm interested. There's probably going to be a theme of, the creatures, the monsters, the NPCs that you're combating, aren't senseless, automatons. Some of them are, but they have, motivations, they have different tactics. So I'm interested to hear about some of how these publisher industry folks kind of position things. 15 master game designers and storytellers are involved. With essays that cover everything from strategy and tactics to the history of military systems at war, from increasing the tension in a conflict to using monsters, magic, and war machines on the field. So this is probably going to be this would be a good book, I think. We could all learn something a little bit from that. We could get into combat, all right, bad guy, all right, let's roll for initiative. All right, initiative, everybody's dead. Next. Can be very... And I got to imagine in this book, it may even have individuals that write about how to spice up the combat, not as much as tactics, like, hey, if you're being attacked by a monster, the monster might, many monsters are in the real world afraid of humans. Like, they don't want to deal with you. They only want to screw with you if maybe they're sick, they're hungry, and you literally are on the food chain, or they're cornered, right? So there's like these, but in D&D, everything's like, hey, attack till it dies. Yes, in some systems and in some game masters, they'll be like, I gotta check morale, do a morale check. Or if half the group is gone, they flee, whatever. But The Monsters Aren't Stupid is a good book too. That gives you some methods to the madness, like how do kobolds really attack? And do we play it like that all the time? Maybe not. So this might be an interesting one to check out. Plus, I think it's like going aside again from the tactics is how do you kind of role play up the combat piece? I'm sure there's going to be a flavor essay in there, right? Where you get out of the, my turn. Okay, nope, 16, 15, 14. All right, you're up. Go. Next, Eric. All right, your turn. All right, I cast a spell. All right. What's the spell? DC? All right. Fails. How many damage? 6. Sounds good. 6 damage. Oh, you were going after that guy? 6 damage? All right. No, I want to go after the other guy. Oh, okay. Next. Matthew, you're up. All right. Like, sometimes combat can be like the most boring part of a game. Sometimes. So how do you spice it up? This might be a good book to kind of get out of that. Make you think a little. Make you think. Inspired by the golden age of martial arts movies, Fight to Survive is an action-packed tabletop role-playing game with a time-skipping twist. Fight to Survive's focus on martial arts draws from the action movies of influential Hong Kong studio Shaw Brothers and Golden Harvest, known for their key role in the careers of stars such as Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, as well as influential 1970s releases including The 36th Chamber of Shaolin. Creator James Kerr cites 80s Jean-Claude Van Damme vehicle Bloodsport and Wong Yuk-lung's long-running comic series Oriental Heroes as essential influences on the RPG. That's good stuff. Fight to Survive is currently live on Kickstarter. This article was dated March 25th, so I imagine it's still there. Aiming to crowdfund a digital PDF and print-on-demand physical book for release this summer. Interesting. I'll put all this stuff down below for everybody to want to check it out a little bit later and who comes along later. So, yeah. I don't know if it lays out what system it uses. Gameplay rules were completed several years ago. There's a time-skipping martial arts of Fight to Survive may put some players in mind of Saifu, the beat-em-up video game released earlier this year in which the main character ages with each in-game death. I don't know what the core mechanic is. Diceless system to capture the sparring nature of hand-to-hand fights. Players compare moves in a format akin to rock, paper, scissors, with specific moves counteracting or besting others before assigning a number to the strength of each successful blow. Instead of taking damage as hit points, characters take on harm and hardship, representing the increasing toll of fighting. When either harm or hardship passes a given limit, the character is removed from the game. Hardship can be reduced through comforts such as people and places specific to each character. It has some influence from Greg Stafford's Pendragon. Interesting. Interesting. That's what this is all about. All right. This is the last one I got. Last one. Survey results are in an overview of the tabletop role-playing games market. What was this about? This is off of Renegade Studios. W-R-E-N. Renegade Studios. There was, what is this? As we get Haunted Beyond the Veil, alpha release. They wanted to better understand the role-playing game landscape that they were getting themselves into. So with decades of collective experience under our belts, it is all too easy to fall into a trap of assuming our journey is the same as everyone else's. That our idea for Renegade system is the solution to any deficiencies we may have found when playing other games. So in order to get a good baseline, we recently ran a short survey that many kind folks were willing to complete. Further ado, delve into the results. Some industry metrics. The sample size was small, 140 people. Let's see. Introduction to RPGs, game genre, preference, and type of play. Any surprises? Session length and where they played. Well, obviously most games are multi-session campaigns that can last weeks, months. System favorites, the wish list, and roleplay. Yeah. Talks about their findings a little bit. There you go. I don't know. Anyways, I'll put that down there. You could look at some of their findings from some questions they put out there in the hobby. I think there's some probably... I don't know how some of the questions that they had, if there were any surprises. I think our hobby is... We have our outliers, but I think a majority... some of the questions might not be, the answers to some of their questions might not be big surprises. We'll, check it out. So anyways, that's what I had to talk about. I don't have a main topic today. I had a lot of news things that I came across on the web that I thought I'd share, a lot of different games coming around. I don't know if that's a thing that you guys appreciate or not. I think some of the game pieces like what I was finding was I'd get somebody that would post something to Discord, or I'd find on Twitter and be like, hey, this game is really cool. It's doing some, innovative things. And that would be like, okay. And then maybe a month later, I'd have that somebody would bring that up again, and I might have forgot the original post or where did it come from. So it's kind of like spurring some of them to present to you to see if it's something you're interested in. Yeah, that's why I do it. I don't know, maybe it's not a thing I should do every week, but it's a lot of the news that's going on in the hobby. These guys need to find another hobby. The Cortex license, Dragonlance, Paizo doing 5e, some new games, Vaesen Con, Hasbro rejecting the equity firms, wanting to get influence within Hasbro to spin off Wizards. New launch a new book from Kobold. So a few things. Now you know. Hopefully you are more enlightened than when you joined. This I will go into, then probably wrap up the show. So I stepped down from Forbidden Lands game mastering, and one of the groups that's been going for over a year, Phil and Kevin and Wayne and Harrigan are a part of that. So the last thing I mentioned to you guys, I think, about that was they went through a portal in the woods, and what happens. And then we're going to pick up later. Well, that game is going to be put on hold temporarily. We'll come back to it, but it's on hold. Harrigan is going to take his stab at running Forbidden Lands. He'd like to, so I'm like, hey, you want to start now? It's a good spot. It's up to you. If you can be ready and you feel like it's something you want to do now. So he's going to kick off a game. Limited amount of sessions is what he mentioned for the Bitter Reach. So we're all making up new tunes. And I will be a player playing Sas. Forgot Sas's last name. He's a peddler. So he's kind of a wheeler and dealer kind of guy, I guess. Which is kind of a unique profession, because that's what they're called in Forbidden Lands. Because you have rogue, you have fighter, you have peddler, you also have minstrel. So you could see components of each one kind of overlapping a little bit. So the way I'm going to play this character is a kind of a scouting person that has some social skills, I guess, and having being in the group will end up going to the Bitter Reach. That is a supplement released by Free League that takes you to, a really winter tundra environment. Like, if you don't have the right clothes, you check every quarter hour to freezing. So most of the game is done in quarter segments per day, 4 quarters per day. So you start getting into, all right, I got to check a few hours, then it starts to boil down a little bit. So the premise, I think, is my motivation, like, why would an adventuring party go to like the coldest part of the world? And how you run it is going to be interesting, and position it. So that's our deal. So we're kind of coming out of this forest, and we're going to way towards the Bitter Reach. My motivation is simply that there's trade to be done there. Like, there's probably some resources up there. We could get some good trading going, and I could make a bundle of money or gold. So that's the angle my character is in it for. And then we've got the other player characters that have their own motivations as well. So we'll see. Forbidden Lands is an interesting one to kick off because you're trying to figure out the dynamics of the party, getting them kind of to go in a particular direction. Not necessarily, but you could wander around a sandbox without any guidance for a long time. So if you give some players some hooks, it helps. Like, what direction does it matter? Well, it matters because you're trying to get to some destination, even though you might not know where that endpoint is. So, and then along the journey, right? Part of Forbidden Lands. So I'm interested. I'm excited to play. It'll be fun. We don't know how long it's going to last as far as how many sessions, which is completely fine. Already kind of ran into a scheduling hiccup. So we got, the next time we play, we won't have all 4. So we're probably going to do a one shot. Phil was talking about maybe running Vaesen. I wouldn't mind running Alien. I think I can do it in 4 hours. I don't know. I did pick up the Heart of Darkness, I think is the newest release in PDF, but not, print is coming, but it is supposed to be a one shot cinema, right? They have the cinema play, and then they have the serial. I don't remember what they call it, but you can play Alien in 2 modes essentially. So I don't know. We'll see. We've played Mothership one shots. Last week I mentioned how Wayne ran a Black Hack one shot. So it's good stuff. So we'll see what we're going to play substituting while one of the players is out. Who says one thing I appreciate about Harnmaster is that combat can reach a tipping point rather than a slow whittling of HPs. Yeah. Combat systems are interesting, right? It's the games. Would you like me to run it for you all? Maybe. It'd be 2 weeks from yesterday, Thursday. So maybe I could run it by the guys. It would be 3 of us. So were you thinking of streaming it, Eric, or no? Or will you just run it? You're a busy guy, man. You sure you can bite off more? The other thing I'll bring up is today's episode of Gaming and BS has dropped. The one will drop to the public right around noon. Patrons, you have it already. At the end of that episode, we talk about Vaesen. And at the end of the episode, of course, I asked Brett what we're talking about next week, or in the next episode. I should probably stop saying next week since we do it every 2 weeks. Brett told me to write up 2 first-level characters. 5th edition, core rules only. So I'm kind of crowdsourcing that. So I posted a Patreon. Some of you have chimed in. Thank you very much. The Gaming and BS Patreon. So thank you. Some have chimed in on our Discord server. Thank you. So we'll see. Getting some interesting responses. Some are very like, oh, this is what you should play. Is this person and this. So I'm asking for race, class, and maybe a 2-sentence background, right? Or what they're doing. I don't know if there's much more to crowdsource for that. And the reason I find it interesting is there's some that are like, okay, 5th edition, got it. Sean, you should totally play this guy, and they're tied together because of this reason. And then there's one that's like, you should play Fighter McFighter Pants, whose parents were killed by orcs, right? Which I think Nelson gave me that one. which goes to the theme of the show, which I think is probably something I would be interested in choosing, right? Something that Brett quotes all the time or something, right? You know, the guy who's playing Fighter from Fighter, that's what it's, Fighter from Fighter Town, whose parents were killed by orcs. Sounds to me like Sean has to play Fighter from Fighter Town, whose family was killed by orcs. Comes all full circle, people. So Brett is going to run me, like, that's it. Like, run, you know, show up with 2 characters of first level. He didn't even tell me, like, what the, like, do I do array? Like, I don't know. Do I roll 3d6 down the line? Brett will not care, I'm sure. Like, he could give 2 shits. I should just roll up 2 guys, you know, 18s down the board. So, and this is also interesting, right? Because so, okay, Sean, what's the purpose? Well, Brett's going to run me through something, I would imagine for an hour or 2 hours, and he's going to speak his mind as he does it. Like, I'm going to choose this. I'm going to choose to say this, or I'm going to choose to put this in front of Sean, and this is the reason why. And we'll set it up. Brett, what are we going to do today? What's your approach? Is this something you've run before? How many times? No, you haven't. Oh, okay. Do you have things planned in mind? How much? What does that look like? To really get an understanding of how Brett would prepare this. You know, how much prep did you put into this? Did you just wake up and show up onto the stream and know that I have 2 first level characters and that's it, right? And how are you going to come up with the things that you're going to come up with? And then as I do things and take actions, how are you going to adjust as a game master and why? And I think some of the things I should do probably should be to throw them for a loop on some stuff. Maybe I'm, you know, if I'm representing 1 player, 2 characters, or am I representing 2 players, a character apiece? In which case, I think I should just cheat, like make a player character. Like, yeah, I got 18s, like all down the board. How does Brett handle that, right? Because I think these are the scenarios and situations where we don't see insight into. We get letters about, we get voicemails about, like, I know this guy's cheating, blah, 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 blah. You know, they always have the best character. Well, how do you handle it then? Well, I don't know. Yeah, how would you handle it? And then there's a Reddit thread, you know, or, you know, 50 responses on Twitter based on this one thing. Like, I've got a guy that's cheating. I know he is. What do I do? You know, and well, how do you know he's cheating? Why do they do that? Oh, this is what I would do. That's what I would do. And so I think it will be an interesting experiment. I don't know how long it's going to go for. It could be just 1 episode, or it could be, you know, multi-sessions. I have no idea. I don't know the setting it's taking place. Our session 0 is like not really existent at this point. Roll up 2 characters, first level. So that might even be a thing. Like, hey man, I did this. I hope it's fine. We didn't have a session 0. Is that a big deal? Right? I don't know if Brett has session 0s. I think he does. Like, he sits down with his group and says, hey, I'm going to roll this, you know, Streets of Avalon game. You know, this is kind of the deal. This is what I'm looking at. This is kind of, you know, feeling I'm going for. I mean, I imagine he's got to set that up to some degree. Although he might not have to as much anymore because it's pretty standard for his own group, right? Like, you know, even Forbidden Lands, the Bitter Reach with Harrigan, our session 0 is pretty light simply because we've been playing together for a year. So, you know, he did point out some things about saying like, hey, I'm going to go into more lore than Sean has, or I'm going to do, you know, I found some things that I'm going to do that you didn't do. And I'm like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. And he's just stipulating those so that when the style of play changes from me to him, the group's kind of understanding those dynamics. Okay, got it. No problem. Speaking of which, the Forbidden Lands Bitter Reach game, I did record the audio and the video. The video, I don't know if it's that great. We're using Zoom, not a big fan. And the reason we are is because we've got some limitations internet-wise, and Zoom is the best for connection. So we'll see. But I do plan on taking some of the video and audio and maybe cobbling something together editing it a little bit. I mean, we had session 0 last night, so we were writing up our characters, so there's a lot of dead air. So getting rid of that, maybe putting in some commentary, you know, whether I talk to Harrigan or the players. Most of what I will probably do, like, you know, I find that actual plays have a particular recipe that they follow. You know, we got to introduce the characters every time, which is fine, but maybe I just introduce them in session 0, episode 0. Here's the premise. This is what we're going to do. And then inject the audio from the audio from the play, and then inject myself, set up what is about to happen, bring in the audio again. We'll see. It might be quite an endeavor, but nonetheless, again, with the intention of doing it a little bit differently than some other actual plays. And some people might find that, you know, they appreciate it, and some might not. So that's that on the Forbidden Land side. And, you know, I can do that as a player a little bit better than producing and GMing and doing all that stuff. Eric Frankhouse is an animal because he does everything. So if you don't, check out his Twitch channel. I don't know if you put it in the chat if it'll come up, Eric, but by all means, I would go ahead and do that. And yeah. Anyways, so then Gaming MBS, we will do that not this Monday, but the following, which is like what, the 16th? Where's my mouse? I lost my mouse. Whoa, okay. I think. Never had my calendar up. Today's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 11th? The 11th. I think we're recording. The 11th. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. It'll be different. A completely different format. We'll see how it goes. Friday would be tough. Anyways, Xenodead Zone versus Alien. Check out XDZ and drive-through. Okay. Eric says, fighter magic item vendor, halfling who steals items and sells them to pay off his department to a Rakshasa. Yeah. We'll see. Mage illusionist thief. They had illusionist in the 5th edition base? 2 words, Sean. Gnome illusionist. Yeah, maybe. One's going to have to be called Brett. A frickin' frack, maybe. Brothers, frickin' frack. Like, I don't want to take it too seriously. Like, that's the thing. I'm getting some, like, good things. Like, they're like, oh, dude, you should totally make this guy and that guy, and this is what their dynamic is, and da, 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 da. I'm like, I'm trying to keep it a little more lighthearted, just because it's Brett. I do like Fighter from Fighter Town, whose parents were killed by orcs. from our show, right? It's got to kind of tie into who we are and what we're about. So I don't know. We've talked about Fightor. It's got to be Fightor, not Fighter. Fightor from Fighter Town, whose parents were killed by orcs. I don't know what else. What other tropes have we come up with in our show? But going, having said that, if I play as I am and I just kind of go with the flow and be the good player, I don't know if that's valuable. I think there's got to be some bad player pieces I pull in. So bad player pieces that I could pull in, that has to have Brett deal with those, like as a game master. That's where the value is. When everything's going smoothly, what's the point? Yeah. So it'll be fun. Barbarian. It's almost like I gotta have this super optimized guy who's just a wrecking machine, right? It's got all the pluses and bonuses, and he's got like a 2 charisma, but because his strength is like 20, just something crazy off the wall where it's just like, yep, I'm bulldoze this. Not to foil him necessarily, but you gotta kind of wanna, what's the point of this episode, right? It's to give insight to Brett adapting to player and making choices. And we could certainly do that with just playing, straight, as the straight guy, and versus the foil. I don't know. Gnome Warlock of the Chain, who rides his familiar, a dire weasel. I like it. It's good stuff. That's good. I like it. Gnome Illusionist, always good stuff. I should make, without a session 0, I can make anything and he's going to have to adapt. Do I make 2 combat killers that's all they do? Combat. Or do I have 2 that are just social? 2 bards. One is the agent of the other. Oh, a comedy duo. Abbott and Costello. Call them Babbitt and Ostello. And they're a comedy troupe. That's what they do. Oh, man. Going south quick with that one. Whatever he says you are doing, turn around and do go the opposite way. Right, exactly. All right, so here's the deal. Here's the setup. Blah, 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 blah. You're in Avalon, and you're at this tavern, and this guy walks in, and he falls on the table. I don't want anything to do with that. Screw that. Shit, that's trouble, man. Let's go home. What's a day look like for my character? Like, I imagine he's got to make some money. So maybe what? Does he like work for, a bar? Does he, I don't know, is he a landscaper? Does he like mow lawns? I don't know. Is he a gong farmer? Oh God, I want to go, it's probably harvest time. I want to harvest some gongs. Like, how's he going to flow me into an adventure? Now, at the same time, I kind of got to go with the flow here. We talk about players that are like, they go off this way. You kind of we got to want to have the player do a little bit of what players should do, right? Tag team barbarian grappler build. Yeah. Heads up, meatball. Suplex. Oh, man. It'll be fun. I have no idea what I'm getting into. I trust Brett, though. He'll probably try to gross me out. This pussing black sludge coming out of all his orifices, and his hand splashes through the skin of his stomach. Someone stole my gongs. There you go. Also, I could be like the overzealous good player, like like what would be the epitome of a good player, right? What does that look like? Always offering the game master leads, always following the game master's lead, making suggestions on what might be, what if I see something like might come to an end, opening it up, something, you know what I'm saying? Like, how would that look? We take the bad players, right? Like, I don't want to go that way. That's not interesting. I'm going to go farm gongs. I don't want any of this trouble. Or like, okay, sounds good. Like, I'm all in. Yeah, I go up to him, talk to him right away. Like, I talk to every NPC. Is there anything here, Oh, Hoos. I don't know if he'll incorporate that. He's kind of gotten out of that trope a little bit. But yeah. I could just incorporate that into my NPCs. Like, yeah, they had a nightmare of, they have nightmares of dead babies all the time, and they're not sure what that is. Like, what is a good player, and what does that look like? Profession is bonsai tree master. Who knows? Could be. I'm going to have to use D&D Beyond. I haven't read blah, blah. I don't know when the last time is that I wrote up a 5th edition character. So D&D Beyond it is. Character gen. Woo! Could do random too. Who knows? Core books. Generate. Shh. Ask about a random item he mentions and dive in. There you go. We'll see. Brett, I'm interested in how he sets it up. Like, okay, here's the, because he can get right there. Like, this is the deal. This is what's going on. you know this one, you know this guy, you know that guy, and then you're sitting here, and this is what the deal, and you hear this rumor, and and what do you want to do? You know, guy comes in, stumbles in the bar, falls onto your table, knife in the back. Guy comes into the bar, yelling at him, you know, what do you do? Right? It could be just that easy and that quick. So we'll see. I don't even know that guy. I'm out of here, man. Screw this. Fighter from Fighter Town. His parents were killed by orcs. And he hasn't asked me to send them to him ahead of time either. Like, he just show up. 2 first level characters. Core books only. So we'll see. We'll see what it's about. Might be a 2-hour session. Might be an hour. But it'll be fun. It'll be on the game. It'll be televised. It'll be on YouTube Live at 8 p.m. Central Time. If you're not a subscriber, go over there and subscribe. You get notified. And then it'll come out in audio. And it'll fit audio. We're not going to do anything crazy like virtual tabletop. I don't know. I don't think so. Brett can roll without a VTT. Unless he needs to show me something, in which case we'll just describe it and put it in the audio version. So it'll come out in podcast audio form. Poor bar. How many times have we been here where this thing happens? Do I find this happens all the time? Maybe I should become the security. Prevent people from getting stabbed in the back and stumbling into your bar every week. So we'll see. Anyways, I think that's it for me. There is another Forbidden Lands game that I'm running on Wednesday nights. We're going to hit session 4 or 5, I think, next week as of this recording, which should be getting to the end. They're standing outside the Goblin, and we'll see. Dorigo's in that game, as well as Jim and Farty. So it's funny. They first foray into Forbidden Lands, and there's gone a few hexes, and they've gone to they come across the Goblin Cave. We end there. They leave. And at the end of that session, they end up back in front of the Goblin Cave again. And then they go in the Goblin Cave, go out of the Goblin Cave, and then the session ends and they're in front of the Goblin Cave. So it's hilarious because it's Forbidden Lands and it's like, you know, survival, hex crawl, fantasy. These guys have been in front of this cave for like 3 sessions, which is totally fine, right? That's not a knock. It's just funny. And if I had planned like all these things, right? Like, hey, I don't want my bad evil guy to die, and there's this plot, and they got to go this way, and oh, wait a minute, they've been in the front of this cave for like 3 sessions. If I'd spent like 8 hours of plotting these sessions over sessions, and they decide, well, we're just going to sit here at this cave, we're going to get our food back because they stole it, right? Some of those interesting aspects. So I think we'll wrap that up because it was supposed to be a limited, 4 to 5 session run. Maybe they'll get their food back and kill the goblins, and then we'll call it a day. So, and then I'll fire up another game. I haven't decided what it is. I've talked about feng shui, but I need to get some like a character sheet. In place so that it's easier for folks just to push a button and roll. Don't need it, but it could be helpful. So that's that, folks. That's my games. That's what's going on in this life. I hope you all are doing well. I hope you're all gaming and having fun. Okay. That's being the key word. But stay safe. Game on. And remember, be a positive force in the tabletop RPG hobby. Give this a like if you found any of this remotely interesting. Subscribe if you are so willing. So yeah, thanks everyone.